Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. So, you play a number of roles in your life, all with expectations from partner, mom, friend, colleague, child, perhaps sibling, and so much more, all of which need your attention, and that puts your needs and attention in this scattered place where you often find yourself living in this internal storm of turmoil. There is a path out of those feelings and behaviors. So I sat down with mom guilt expert Melissa Peduzzi to talk about her method and tools to help you be the best mom by showing up as your best self and helping you create solid relationships with your children. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. One thing that I know I have experienced, and nearly every client that I have spoken to that is a parent will tell me they have mom guilt. Everybody just went, oh, I can feel that. Oh, every one of us has it. Melissa, you are an expert when it comes to mom guilt. We're going to be talking about it, how it shows up, how it impacts us, and even maybe how we can get out of it. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how did you come to this pathway of serving women in this way?
Oh my goodness. I am an expert in mom guilt because I have lived it. Oh my goodness. I became a mom through the blessing of adoption. And so when this 2.5-year-old was placed in my arms, all of these things I had been dreaming of up until that point clashed headlong into the reality of a 2.5-year-old with his own opinions and his own ideas and his own language. We didn't even speak the same language at the time. And so navigating through motherhood from that perspective was an eye opener for me for sure.
Mm.
And as I learned that my reality was not what I had dreamed of, there was so much frustration. There was so much guilt. There was so much shame that was built up in that. And I found it just kind of like this low level current throughout my motherhood journey. And I knew that there had to be something more. There had to be something different. I did not want to live this way. I did not want to be frustrated all of the time.
Right.
And so as I started talking to other moms who were wiser, who had journeyed down this road before, I started learning some tools and some things that I could practice to get out of that frustration and mom guilt and learn to create the mom life that I wanted and the mom life that I dreamed of for a more peaceful existence for all of us together. And so the chaos, it's still there,
Of course.
100%. We didn't change our circumstances, but I learned how to change me from the inside out to show up for what I wanted to. And as I learned that skill, I knew that all the mamas out there who were feeling the same way that I was, no mom should have to stay stuck in guilt and frustration. There is an alternative. There is a way that you can take control of your life.
Quite the journey. There's so much to that. I'm sitting here from the therapy mind going, oh wow, then you have connectivity and you have all these other things that are involved in just adoption itself, but just parenting, period. Let's start in a place where we actually define what mom guilt is, because all of us have our own definition of it. And I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, people come in and say, I feel so guilty, or I have blame and shame about X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, that's actually not mom guilt. What you're experiencing is this. And so we have a hard time labeling things sometimes. We don't want to live by labels, but we do need to know what we're dealing with. So could you, give us the definition of what mom guilt is?
Yes, for sure. To me, mom guilt is that overwhelming feeling of not doing enough for your kids or not being enough. And I think it can come from so many root issues, which is why it pops up in all of these different ways. And people think they're experiencing mom guilt when it's something else entirely. But I think that's at the root of it. It's just this overwhelming feeling of not being enough or doing enough for our kids.
That brings up something for me that let's take a sidestep for just a second, because I see women who struggle with self-worth and low self-confidence and self-esteem, where it may not even be, present at all. who show up for their kids in a way that is so validating. And I'm like, why can't you do that for yourself? I'm like, well, I'm not deserving of it or whatever, or vice versa. And so, where does that line, at least for you and what you've seen, cross over? And how do we kind of mitigate that?
I think that's a really complicated question. And
Isn't
I
it?
think, yes, there's a lot tangled up in that. And I
Mhm.
think the two are kind of tied together. So it's really hard to separate them from each other. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of mom guilt does come from not knowing your own purpose and your own worth. And so that's a lot of what I help moms do is to rediscover what it is that they are so that they
Mhm.
can show up as their truest, highest self, which then allows them to walk into motherhood how they want to. And so I don't know that we can really separate the two. We have to kind of look at them holistically and together. I think a lot of moms have what I like to call a mom manual. And it is this think of like a giant refrigerator manual that tells you all of the things about your refrigerator, right? But it's for moms.
Right.
And we didn't take it on necessarily by choice.
Mm,
It's things that we have ingrained in us from our parenting experience, from being parented, from what we see other people doing,
right.
all of the shoulds
Ugh,
that I know that word, it gives
I
me the
hate that word.
shivers. Yes, that's the root of mom guilt right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shoulds, all
Mm,
of those shoulds and all of those expectations that we bring to motherhood,
right.
thinking that it has to be this way, even if we don't know it consciously. And so
Yes.
to unpack that mom manual that we're living our life by, that we're allowing to dictate how we walk through motherhood, oh my goodness, what an eye opener. And then, and only then, once we know what is driving us, can we start to write our personal mom manual with purpose and with design.
Let's go there. Let's start with how does one discover what our manual is?
I think it takes a lot of soul searching and a lot of honest vulnerability, which I feel like most moms put resistance up here at this
Oh, yeah.
point.
Mhm.
Who's got time to sit in a field of daisies and journal all day, right? Like, I get that. We don't have time for that. But I think with some pointed reflection, we can start 5 minutes at a time to be like, you know what? I was in this situation here with my kiddo. We were
Mhm.
butting heads about the dishwasher.
Right.
He put his bowl in upside down. It's not going to get washed. We've gone over this 18,000 times. I'm feeling very frustrated and I'm coming out in a way that I don't want to be.
Mhm.
Let's take this as an example and back up and be like, wait a minute. Why is my subconscious running so hot at a
Mhm.
bowl in the dishwasher that I just have to flip over? What's going on here? And so, one instance at a time that we come up with, we can start to unpack that mom manual. We can start to write that down and be like, do you know what? Do I want to hold on to this? Do
Yeah.
I want to hold on to the idea that my kids should perfectly load the dishwasher every time?
Right.
I could, but I'm going to be frustrated probably every breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or I can
Mhm.
let go of it and be like, you know what? My kids are learning and I'm here to help them learn. That's what I want in my mom manual instead.
Yeah. You just said something I want to stop and pause for just a second. You said, why is my subconscious running so hot? That is probably one of the best questions in nearly 300 episodes. And, even just in my own learnings and teachings that I've heard in a long time. Why is my subconscious running so hot? It is such a space to do some digging, just like what you were talking about. It's something too that brings awareness to our habits that are habitual and not conscious. Beautiful question. The response for me personally as a mom, I'm a mom of three, an adult child, one that's almost a senior in high school, and then an 11-year-old. We waited forever. But for me, when we get into those situations, I have a question between the two of us to get resolution. And the resolution question is, how did we do?
Mm,
How did we do in that moment?
mm,
Because it's not just all mom.
yes.
Thoughts on that?
I think that's beautiful. I think that is beautiful. It is a collaboration for
Mhm.
sure. And
Mhm.
it can be really frustrating when we don't feel like our collaboration partner is pulling their weight.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we get to remember in those moments, we're the mom,
Yeah.
right? We have so much more life experience. We have so much more practice
Mhm.
showing up compassionately for ourselves and for them.
Right.
And so we get to extend that rope there. And kind of drop the rope on our side and say, you know what, I'm not holding on to this.
Yeah.
We're not going to let this be a thing that drives us apart, but we
Right.
can use it to pull together. And that is what the beauty in that question is, how did we do? It's
Hmm.
not just me, it's us together. How can we pull together even more?
Yeah. It's so easy to get frustrated. It's so easy to live in that manual, like what you're talking about. So once we begin to ask that question, why am I running so hot? Or why are my responses the way my responses are? Where do we go from there? Because we can ask ourselves that, but if we don't do anything with it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was kind of alluding to is that switch that
Mhm.
we can make. Like, this
Right.
is what is in that manual now. Instead, I want to focus on this principle
Hmm. Hmm.
because our mind is brilliantly smart, and whatever we tell it to look for, it will find.
Right.
And so, if we are focused on that dishwasher being loaded correctly every time, we're going to see every little fork that's out of place.
Right.
But if instead we're focused on that learning opportunity, we can start to shift that perspective there. And
Hmm.
I think writing it down as we come across it is so vital to being able to see it again and to remember what it is. Otherwise, it's just a fleeting thought that's in and out. It's in the noise of the everyday. It's really hard to come back to. And so
Hmm.
just taking a minute to jot it down in the notes on your phone, voice record it, and listen to it again later. Doesn't matter where you do it, but it's somewhere that you can access it again.
Right.
And things that I'm working really hard to reprogram, I'll make a lock screen for my phone and I'll put
Mm.
it on my phone so that I can see it. Every day when I go to look at my phone, I'm like, oh, there it is again. There's that thing I'm practicing. And I
Right.
don't use it to bring more guilt on myself and be like, you know what, I wasn't doing that thing that I'm just seeing now. I use it to say, you know what, I'm learning and growing, just like my kids learn to walk.
Hmm.
I didn't expect them to run across the room the first time that they stood up. I
Right.
expected them to fall down on their little diaper bottom and hop back up and maybe take a step. And I cheered them on every step of the way.
Right.
And with that same energy, I try to bring myself as I'm learning and I'm growing. I'm like, wow, there's that thing I've reminded myself again. And
Right.
I maybe took a shaky little step here and I fell back down and I'm going
Mhm.
to get back up and I'm going to do it again.
Let's talk about what most women have in their mom guilt kind of arsenal. And then let's start talking about the redirection even deeper, if you wouldn't mind. What do you see are some of the most coveted behaviors that we kind of hold on to? And I mean that in a very negative way, right? Like
Hmm.
yelling or, overreacting or whatever. What are you seeing that most women as moms have as their mom guilt?
Yes, there's that big volcano explosion.
Yeah.
And then there's this withdrawal, this pulling out of life, this disconnection from what they feel they've broken. And so it just perpetuates the cycle because they want to be close to their kids. They had a moment, they freaked out, they blew up, they volcanoed all over everybody, and then they pull out.
Mm,
And the most coveted thing that I see is doom scrolling. They will go to their phones,
mm,
they're on Instagram, scrolling through, looking at all the pretty pictures and going, you know what? I will never measure up to this.
yeah.
I can never be that. Look at all the great things that they're doing. I'm such a terrible person. I yelled at my kids. I blew up. Now I've got to hide in
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah.
And they don't share that with anyone else. It becomes a secret that locks up inside of them that then locks them up. And I think we're protecting everyone by not letting them see what's going on inside of us. But the only thing you're doing is rotting from the inside out.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
cannot thrive holding shame inside of you.
Right. Yeah.
And so when we bring it to the light, when we say, you know what, I'm struggling here, I feel like a terrible mother. You know, when you say those words out loud, everyone else in the room says, you know what, me too.
Right.
I
Yeah.
raise my hand here too because we are human and
Yeah.
we are all having a human experience together.
Right.
There's no other way to do this thing. You're
Yeah.
not going to get it right all of the time, but that does not make you a terrible mother.
Hmm.
But instead of looking for that help and finding that, we withdraw and pull in ourselves,
Right.
hide that shame, keep it in the dark, and then it continues to fester and grow inside of us. But that's what I see as the most coveted
Yeah.
for sure.
I agree with you. It's interesting, my children always remind me a lot of times that we have open line of communication. You're allowed to say whatever it is that you need to say and address. I'm not going to take it as an offense or, blame, shame, or guilt. I'm going to hear you and I'm going to give you my reasoning why I did what I did, but I'm going to understand how that impacted you. And that's first and foremost for me, and something I definitely teach moms as they come in and talk about how they're feeling. But the other thing is, we're growing. If we haven't met the experience either, how would we know how to navigate the experience?
Mm,
And that's the biggest thing, right? It's like, well, I blew up. I did this. I had a reaction. And this made me feel this way. And I didn't stop. I didn't pause. I just did. Okay. Is this new to you? Yes. Okay. So you had an emotional response to a moment that makes you human, just like you
mhm,
said, right? Like we're
mhm.
all here having the human experience. If you have an emotional response to a moment, doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it that's what it was. And I think that's
Mm.
the biggest thing that, the comparison, that I'm never going to be good enough. I was learning at the same time that you were learning, because I too have never been in this time, in this space with you as a parent to anyone.
Yes. And I think what an example we get to have after those moments of repair
Mhm.
when
Right.
we come and show our kids what you do when you have those emotional moments,
Right.
when things are going to happen. You're going to experience the same things that I do, not in the same way,
Right.
but you're going to have those same feelings. And so
Yeah.
to say, you know what, I am so sorry for the way that I showed up here is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of moms feel like they can't say that because then it
Right.
shows that they're weak or that they're not the mom. Moms aren't supposed to know it all. Moms get to learn with their kids, and there's so much beauty in that and being able to come back after those moments and restore that connection.
Really what you're talking about, and it's certainly the way I parent, it sounds the way that you parent as well, is that you create a partnership in your relationships. It's so necessary. Not saying that one is equal, that's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that it sounds like there's open communication to be able to say what you need to say, live the experience together. How did we do in the moment, and what do we need to course correct or grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's beautiful. And it hasn't always been that way, I will say for sure. And I can say the other side doesn't work as well. It just doesn't. Trying to bully our children into being the things that we think they should be
Right.
is a recipe for disaster. I think that's a whole nother chapter in our mom manual is what our kids should and shouldn't be.
Oh,
And when we
yeah.
live by that, we're creating such a disconnect between the two of us, which doesn't lay the foundation for connection, which
Hmm.
doesn't lay a foundation for grace and compassion and being able to show up the way that we want to. We're just seeing all the ways that our kids, as humans themselves, are not meeting the expectations that we have of them.
Hmm.
And it's a recipe for disaster.
Let's go into that a little bit more, because I think that is also a big basis of what we see when moms come into therapy, right? Is that they're like,
Mm.
well, I wanted this and I thought it was going to be this way, and those expectations are really, if I was the one driving the bus, this is how the situation would have gone down. That's really the way that we're looking at these things. How does one begin to identify that maybe it's not my kid, maybe it's my expectation of my kid?
Oh, I would say it probably always is. Sorry
Right.
to be the bearer of bad news, but when did we decide that we're the best driver for our kids' bus?
Mm,
For
yeah.
them as a human. I mean, we get to set boundaries for sure for our kids to keep them safe, to help them grow, to
Right.
help them learn. We set a safe perimeter for them to drive their bus in. And it
Hmm.
grows as they get bigger. It can shrink sometimes as we've learned that the perimeter is too big and we are not safe in here.
Right.
But we cannot drive that bus for them.
Hmm.
There
Hmm.
is absolutely no way. And it's such a hard thing to grapple with as a mom because we're entrusted with these little souls to take care of.
Yeah.
And we think, I could do this so much better if they would
Ah,
just let me drive their stinking bus. I've
yeah.
got this. But who are we to say that?
Right.
How do we know where they're going?
Mm.
They
Hmm.
have their own personalities, their own desires, their own things that are growing inside of them that they're creating that we have no idea about.
Right.
We get to watch it unfold,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't get to drive that bus. And so, yes, our children are going to have behaviors. Yes, they're going to be struggling through things. But when we're meeting that with frustration and guilt and responsibility
Mm-hmm.
and fixing it,
Right.
the problem is ours. It's not in them.
Yeah. Mm. Such a powerful way to really just step back and say, my kids are here through me, not for me.
Mm,
And that's really important, right? Through the home, through the system, through the safe space that we're creating for them, not for me to live their life for. I think that is so powerful. So
mm.
powerful. It also takes the burden of our guilt, blame, and shame away if we just live that way.
It does,
To some
mostly.
level.
But it likes to keep creeping back in every way
Sure.
possible.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to stay out of that driver's seat.
Hmm.
It is so hard. I've got teens now. We're entering the
Hmm.
teen years, and the desire to drive the bus, it's very, very strong. I grapple with that
Buckle
every day. Yeah,
up.
I don't even want to be on this bus. I'm going to watch it from a safe distance away. Um,
Yeah.
but the desire just to jump in and be like, you know what, I've been there. I lived my teen years. I learned a lot of things from that. I could help you so much if you just listen. But then I reflect back and think, if somebody had told me that,
Yeah.
would I have learned the lessons I needed to learn?
Hmm.
Absolutely not. All I would have done is push up against that and said,
Yeah.
absolutely not. You don't know a thing about my life.
Right.
Let me live mine. And then I have my own lessons to learn too. And sometimes those lessons are really hard. It's really hard to watch them learn them,
Hmm.
but
You
to
know,
be able to step aside and say, you know what? I'm here
mhm,
with you. I will absolutely support you through this, but I can't do it for you.
mhm. There's something else to be said too, and it's something that I've come across multiple times now with a daughter that's in college, is that she'll say something, she'll ask me a question, and I pause. I'm very good about pausing and kind of digesting what she's saying to me. And then I'll come to the conclusion, I don't know. I have a therapy answer for you, but my life experience at your age is completely different than what you're experiencing because the world is different.
Hmm.
What I experienced was totally different than what you're experiencing. You have a beautiful cocoon, but yet everything's exposed where we just didn't have that in 1800, right? So there's there's all of that, right? Like, I mean, it's a big difference too, is to recognize the world we lived in as teenagers and young adults and children is different than the world that our kids live in now, and the expectations, the understandings, even just the environment is
Hmm.
different. There's How do you compare? You have actual no comparison to it.
Yes. And I think that makes the threat to want to drive the bus so much
Bigger,
stronger
bigger.
because it's so scary when you don't know. The
Yeah,
unknown is so scary.
yeah,
But I think back, generation after generation of generation, a parent has done this with
yeah,
new things unfolding. There's
yeah. Hmm.
always been something on the horizon that's
Yeah.
scary and unexpected, and they don't know how to deal with it. Kids are resilient and they learn
Hmm.
especially well when they have that safety of love and compassion and grace around them to
Yeah,
learn what they need to know. And
agree.
so I try to always remind myself of that. There's nothing really new under the sun. There may be new technology and new things that are happening, but it's been happening over and over and over
Done.
again. We will all survive it too. Lean into grace and compassion, walk with them with that partnership through all the things that we're going to face in life and let them drive their own bus.
So that leads me to where all the women are that are listening right now. How? I still am beating myself up. I still feel this way. What I'm seeing a lot of are the 40, 50-year olds that are coming in, and kids are in college, and that identity is lost a little
Mm,
bit. And they're saying, I don't know now. I've lost some of my fight because it was all for my kids, which that brings in a whole other level of guilt, shame, and blame. How do we begin to navigate this experience of letting go? What's our first step once we've identified it?
I've got three things that we do. always that I tell my clients to start with. And we start with the heart, and we've got to process those feelings that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Our thoughts generate feelings,
Yes.
and they're there. Whether or not you like them doesn't matter. Your
Right.
feelings are there. And I think a lot of us have internalized this message that some feelings aren't safe
Mm.
for many reasons, but that's there. And so we stuff them down.
Right.
We hold them down. We can't move anywhere until we allow our emotions to flow through us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we start by looking at what's in our heart and processing those feelings that are there. It takes on average about 90 seconds to let a feeling move through you. We feel
Mm-hmm.
like if I sit in this anger or this depression or this frustration, it's going to last forever.
Right.
But if we allow it, we say, you know what? I feel you. If I had to give you a color, I would give you the color purple right now. And I can feel you sitting heavy on my chest. I'm going to take a few deep breaths through that, and we're just going to be there. And then as we allow that feeling to move, feelings have a loving message for us
Mm-hmm.
if we can let them move through our body. And we can say, what is it you're trying to tell me? And a lot of times those messages of when our subconscious is running hot is that something is really important to us.
Right.
So we can say, this thing I've identified is really important to me. I can see that now. Now, how do I want to move forward?
Right.
And so then we can take a look at those thoughts that are creating those feelings and see
Mm-hmm.
what's going on underneath here. What message am I playing to myself over and over again? Maybe it's the message that I'm only I was only valuable as a mom. Now I have nothing else to offer the world,
Yeah.
which I would argue is not true, friend. You
Yeah.
have so much unique value by being you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can uncover those thoughts. We can replace them with what we want to generate. So if we want to generate hope, what thought creates hope in me right now? And maybe it's that I can figure out how I can come back to creating my purpose and living my purpose in this world. It doesn't have to be that I am. I'm becoming that person. And
Right.
as we start to practice that thought and generate those feelings, we can then move forward in a more purposeful way, a
Right.
life that we design.
That's a beautiful place. I want to point out just a little bit because we've talked about the impulsive feelings here. And one things that I get emails about quite often is that is not true. I've set my emotions. I turned on a timer and it did not go away. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it. What's happening though, as you hear that, if you're new to that concept, and I want to say this because I think it's so important, don't send me the nasty email, y'all. I know that you tried it. Okay. The thing is that if you're sitting in something and you're not intentional with the moving of the emotion, it is likely you're creating a new thought to it. And if you're creating a new thought to it, you're starting the process over again. So
Mhm.
understand if you're sitting in something for 90 seconds and we're continuing to think, you're creating a new emotional stance. And that's going to take forever. This is a very intentional, very singular focus when we're talking about moving through an emotion in that way. Okay. So thought comes in. You're right. Melissa's completely right. Feeling rises to meet that, to give it validation, whether we are going to agree or move it away. And then we have to put action to it. Action is either allowing it to leave or we're creating another thought around it. If you create another thought, you're in that emotion, my friend. So think about that. I want you to think about it. Don't email us and tell us we're wrong. I know this is a thought process.
Yes. And that's such a good point. I think a lot of times we can sit in that emotion and be like, you know what? This is a really valid emotion that I'm feeling,
Yeah.
and I'm going to keep feeling it right
Mhm.
now. And so we just keep
Mhm.
generating it in our body.
Yeah.
And there are so many layers to
Yeah.
so many of these emotions that we've stuffed down. And it's not a one-time process. It
Right.
can be like a once every 5 minute process where it just keeps popping back up and we deal with it and we allow
Mhm.
it to move through us. I love when I'm angry to tense and release. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's something
Mhm.
that you do frequently, but I will tense up my fists all the way up through my forearms, my biceps, my shoulders, pull them all the way up to my ears, and on a big exhale, release it whenever I'm
Mm.
feeling those really big emotions, because emotions are energy. They've
Yes.
got to have somewhere to go.
Yes.
And so that is one of my favorite ways. A lot of my clients love tearing like heavy cardboard or cardstock into tiny little pieces.
Mm.
But the tense and release is great when you're a mom and you don't have a lot of time. You can go to the bathroom, tense and release in the bathroom a few times, and then let that emotion dissipate and come back out,
Yeah.
not as mom Hulk.
I was going to say, let's maybe do that away from the kiddos, especially when they're young, because, but it's a great example, right? It's a great thought process to get that emotion to move. You're right. It's impulse, it's energy. It has to move out of our body. If it doesn't, it regenerates and creates new thoughts. We have to get it out. So I love
Yes.
that idea. For me, it's the big exhale. I'll put my hand over the heart and just be like, okay, I feel that, right? Or even just my verbal warning to everyone around me. I feel overstimulated right now. And people have a really hard time with that word. They think it's such a negative. No, I am recognizing that there is an emotion in me that I'm not comfortable with right now. I'm letting you know that my reaction to your pushing to the moment or whatever is that I may actually do something that I don't want to have between us. So I'm overstimulated. I'm going to take a break, right? I'm
Yes.
I'm leaving the moment, not you. I need to take a second. And then I can re-regulate with the breath because that is our nervous system re-regulation. You're basically doing the same thing when we're tensing and we're trying to get the breath to take the nervous system down. It's beautiful. Whatever tool works for you, please do it.
Yes, yes. And I've taught my kids as young as 7 to do
Mhm.
this too. They love a good tense and release. They'll lay on the floor and go all the way from their toes up to their head
Love
and
it.
let it out when they're feeling really angry or
Mhm.
overwhelmed by an emotion. So it's beautiful to practice, but also to teach to our kiddos as they're learning to regulate their emotions and that,
Mhm.
emotions are okay and they're safe to feel. And we can allow them to move through us and then pick a different choice to move forward instead of, punching our brother.
Hitting them with the pillow and then running crazy through the house. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you're teaching that to them too. And what a beautiful visual for you too to know, okay, they're in a moment that I actually need to respect the boundary of the moment. Instead of
Mm,
pushing, harping, doing all the things that we tend to do as moms, I actually need to allow them to regulate in the moment before we move forward. I think, and before we get into step two, really, of what we're doing, I think a lot of times we fail to remember that, yes, they have emotions, but two, that they're human and are allowed to have reactions. Like,
yes.
hello. I mean, why can't you? If you can do it, why can't they?
Yes. Yes, if I can flip out over a dishwasher bowl being upside down,
Mm.
like their picture being destroyed by their brother is much more intense than the dishwasher bowl that I can just flip back over. But
Right.
my emotions feel completely valid, theirs don't.
Mhm. Mhm. I exactly. One of my biggest lessons came from my now 11-year-old. I think he was 3, maybe. So he came down the stairs and he asked me for something. And I said, just a second, I'll get it for you in just a moment. And I didn't. I was busy. I was doing things. And then he came back around. He said, can I have it again? And I was like, just a second. Later that day, I asked him to pick up his toys and he was building something. And he said, just a second. And I was like, no, now. And he's like, but you got to wait when I needed this. I was like, you are 3 and you are owning me right now.
Yes,
You
they're
are
masters at that.
You are owning me right now. But it was such a beautiful pause. And I have to remember a lot of times, even now, you know, if I need something immediately, doesn't mean that that person wants to provide it immediately either. Does it work for them? I'm not saying allow your kids to railroad, right? That's not what I'm saying. Does the circumstance require action immediately? Can we allow them to have a little space and time, just like we're asking for? They're
Mm,
human.
yes, that's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So good. And I think too, a lot of what we're talking about, I know for me personally, are things that I've practiced for years and years and years. That pause gets easier to take as you continue to practice it. But when I was first learning about it and when I was first trying to implement it, I was not super successful in pausing probably about 80% of the time.
Yeah.
And I could use that to heap more guilt and shame on me as a mom. Like, I
Yeah.
know this. Why am I not doing that? But
Mhm.
you've practiced for longer than you've been practicing the pause, not pausing. Of
Mhm.
course, you're going to respond in the way you've been practicing.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you. That's the way the human brain was designed. It's
Hmm.
kept you alive thus far. It's going to keep trying the same thing.
Right.
And so when you meet resistance, as you're hearing us talk about these things, it's not you should be doing it perfectly right now.
Hmm.
It's a journey for sure. And there's going to be in the beginning more missteps than there are ways that you want to go.
Yeah.
Don't use that against yourself. You're exactly where you need to be. Your
Hmm.
brain is doing exactly its job. And by consciously remembering, oh, wait, I didn't do what I wanted to do, you're starting to reprogram your brain. You're
Yeah.
starting to make those choices you want to. And then it'll start to shift to where you're making the pause more than you're not. And then it almost becomes subconscious to make that pause. So it's a learning process. And I just didn't want anybody hearing us talk about it to be like, oh, I don't do that. I'm not doing that well.
Yeah.
That is perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. And they hear me, all the listeners and anybody that I work with or follows me on Instagram or whatever, hears me say all the time, you're going to screw it up.
Hmm.
And that's okay. The thing is that when something is ingrained, like you were just talking about, it creates a neural pathway for us. Our brain knows to go to that particular thing because that's safe, whether it's safe or not, right? This is a pattern behavior. When we put a new pattern in place, that old pattern doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. It's still present for our choices. It's a matter of did we pick the new road or not. So there are going to be times where you are going to subconsciously, even consciously, make the choice of the old habit, and we have to learn to redirect, like you said, without the guilt, blame, and shame.
Yes. Yes. And creating those new pathways is extremely difficult work.
It
It's like
is.
taking a machete out in the wilderness and trying to clear a path when you've got a well-worn ditch on the other side that you know exactly where it goes.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Hmm. It is.
You're up for it, mama. You are up for it, but you will not get a perfect path the first pass.
Agreed. I like to offer this. It's something that I offer to my own children. And I think it's a very powerful thing. It's something that my husband and I consciously chose to make a part of our parenting. Not in the beginning, right? There were a lot of screw ups that led us to this place. Okay. And do I still screw it up? Yes, I do, but I try is that if I go to an old pattern, I will often say, I need to course correct. Actually, I was wrong. Let's try to move this back around for just a second. This is what my intention is. This is my behavior that I want to actually put in between us. And I'm wondering, would you accept that and join me in that new behavior? I blew up. Oops, that's my old pattern. Please accept my apology. This is my intention. My husband will say, oh, I was trying to get their attention. I'm like, you got it. But we also stop listening, right? We're not doing that anymore. So, what can we do to create a pattern between us now that actually allows that peace, that conversation, whatever? So, one, recognizing and being vulnerable to say it.
Hmm.
Oops, oops, right? And my kids have now gone, that wasn't fair. I apologize. Let me back it up. So they know that the system doesn't work like that either.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so good. I mean, that's just the way the world works
Yeah.
too. We're never going to do anything perfectly. And
Right.
so to be able to have a plan in place, and I loved that part where you said you have the invitation, like, will you join
Hmm.
me in this?
Yeah.
That's beautiful work.
It's hard work, everyone, but it's just also just being intentional, like you're talking about. Let's go to number two of what you ask women to do is one, identify that feeling and kind of changing the behavior and the feeling impulse, sitting in it, redirecting. Where do we go from there?
They have to define where they want to go.
Mm,
And I hear this so often as moms say, I don't have a clue.
right.
I have zero brain space. I have lost myself completely in motherhood. I feel like I'm drowning. I don't know who I am anymore. All I do is diapers and laundry and cooking, and I'm exhausted. And I don't even know what to do. I want more. I know there has to be more than this.
Right.
But how do I get there? And so I call that leading with our soul. And we have to tap in to who we are. We
Mhm.
have to find ourselves again
Yeah.
and then intentionally create a path to move forward in that direction.
Yeah.
And it sounds so overwhelming. It sounds so hard to do, but we are the people who know ourselves the best.
Yeah.
no matter how deep it's buried. We have access to all of the wisdom, to all of the amazingness that is you in all of the ways that you were created
Right.
to light up this world. And the light may have feel like it's been snuffed out right now, but we figure out how to reignite that light so that it can shine for everyone to see, for everyone to benefit, because the world is better when moms live truly alive in the way that they want to show up.
Agreed. It then can create some more guilt and blame and shame for the self when we begin to choose what that purpose and path is that may be a little different than just staying home or whatever. I know for me personally, I've I struggled to stay home. It wasn't something that felt intuitive to me. It felt like I need to still fulfill my purposes versus just being this one aspect. But there's a lot of women that struggle with having more than one purpose or having
Mm.
more than one intention in it being outside of their kids. That's a mom guilt in and of itself.
Yes. And where's that coming from?
Yeah.
We look back at that mom manual.
Hmm.
There's a line written in there that good moms only stay home or good moms only focus on their children. And that may be true for some of you. And that is 100% okay if it is true for you.
Hmm.
And if it's not true for you, it doesn't have to be part of your mom manual anymore.
Such a powerful permission moment, right? Is that I don't really thrive best in just this one space. I know for me, and even my kids have said, you're a better mom when you feel fulfilled. You're a better mom when you do X, Y, and Z. When you're chasing this, chasing's not the best word, but you know what I mean. When you're doing
Mm,
this has us feeling this way. You respond this way. So, like you said, what lights the soul? What
mhm.
feels best to you? How can you best have an intentionality in your space as a parent that actually fulfills you instead of drains you?
And I found just like you were talking about, when moms find what lights their soul on fire,
Mhm.
it crowds out the mom guilt because the
Great
mom
point.
guilt comes from that place of not knowing what you're supposed to be doing or not fulfilling your purpose.
Right.
And
Mm.
so when we figure that out, we crowd out that mom guilt. I mean, it still creeps up. It's a little bit quieter at that point because you know you're living aligned with who you were created to be.
Permission is everything. It always is. It creates safety within us. It helps us redirect the thought process, just like you said. So we have the understanding of the feelings. We are really getting into a space of purpose and awareness. I say that because a lot of people say, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I'm like, that's fine. It's okay. You don't always need to know. It's fine. Are we aware? Right? Are we seeking? Are we intentional? What comes then?
Then you get to reverse engineer the life that you want. You know where you want to go. You know what you want to experience. You know the feelings you want to generate. You know how you want to relate with your kids. You get to go backwards and go, how do I create that in my everyday?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
monotony of motherhood can feel like Groundhog Day and
Yeah.
like we are losing it sometimes. And so when we set our sights on where we want to go and then reverse engineer that and create the life that we want by design on purpose with focus and intention, what freedom is there?
Right.
We
Mm.
get to show up and shine. We get to be exactly what we want to be for our kids. Not 100% of the time because we're still human in this whole
Right.
process, but we're getting closer and closer. We're taking that machete and clearing out the pathway to what it is we really want,
Right.
and we stay after it.
Yeah. And it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old the kids are or how old you are. And I want to address this because I think this it's something that I see a lot is that a series of mistakes, quote, mistakes, a series of failures, again, air quotes for somebody who's not watching us, does not equate a failed motherhood.
Hmm.
So important. I see it so often. Well, I did this and I did that, and they learned this and they're struggling here. And, or I hear it a lot of the moms who are in therapy with me and then their kids come in. They have such guilt that they are in therapy. I messed up.
Hmm.
What is your thoughts there? Because that's a whole other level of mom guilt.
Yes, it is. And there are so many different ways that we can address that. But my favorite way to think about it is what if you didn't mess up? What if this was always part of their story that's creating them to be exactly who they need to be?
Yeah. Mm. Purpose.
Yes. And
Purpose.
I would challenge those thoughts when they come in with that kind of thought. Just say, you know
Hmm.
what? What if this isn't a mistake?
Right.
Yes, I could have done things differently, but I didn't. I can't rewrite the past.
Right.
This is part of their story that
Yeah.
creates them to be exactly who they need to be.
Hmm. Hmm. I will often say my greatest quote failures, although I don't actually believe in failure, I believe in lessons and redirection, has been the thing that has created the best results in my life.
Mm,
And that's really what I want you, and I know, Melissa, that's what you're talking about, is focusing on. My ineptness in that moment was because I didn't have all of the information. I didn't have all the tools. I didn't have all of the directions that I needed at that moment. But that allowed me to, one, seek it, to find permission within myself to actually live the new experience. And it's going to create a new result.
mm,
It's okay. It's okay,
yes.
right? It's okay. How does one begin to, one, recognize that mom guilt is okay? And then how do we begin to reframe it? I know we've talked about some things to reframe, but just in that initial spark.
Yes. I love, love, love when I have something coming up for me to set a timer for 3 minutes and grab a piece of paper, grab my iPad, grab my phone, grab my voice recorder, and just brain dump everything that's going on.
Right.
When we get our words out and our thoughts out, we can actually see what they're creating
Right.
much better than just living in that emotion that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's where I start. Whenever I'm feeling kind of funky, I will take those 3 minutes and
Hmm.
brain dump everything and then look and see what am I creating with my thoughts? Where is this directing me to go? And is this where I want to go? Because you can choose to stay here if you want to.
Right.
No thought is wrong. No feeling is wrong. You get to choose. And if you want to stay in mom guilt, that's your choice, 100%. I might try to drive your bus differently, but that is your choice.
Right.
If you want to do something differently, then we've got to go back to those thoughts that we were talking about that are creating those feelings.
Right.
The guilt is coming from probably a thought like, I should be doing more. I should be a better mom. Everyone else is doing this. Why can't I?
Yeah.
Something like that is probably at the root of your mom guilt. And you
Mm.
keep replaying that subconsciously or consciously, which is then leading your days. And so, if you can take those 3 minutes to pull out of your subconscious what's actually going on in there, there's no right or wrong when we're brain dumping, friends. Don't try to like make it pretty. Just get it all out. If the shopping list comes out while you're doing all this, put it down to you. Just don't stop. Keep going.
Yeah.
See
Yeah.
what's going on in your brain. And then you can create a different reality for yourself with what you want to actually create.
It's one of my favorite tools as well. I love to brain dump. I do it myself every single week. It's a practice that you can use that actually just changes the overall behavior. There can be a rhythm to it. It doesn't have to be freestyle. I'll actually put a link in the show notes that gives you a little bit of step in the manual. We're going to talk about what you're going to provide to everybody in just a second. I was going to ask you, what's the feeling that a lot of people begin to experience once they've moved through giving themselves permission and understanding the emotion and then redirecting? What feeling are we looking for?
It depends on you personally.
Yeah.
My three that I hear the most are hope, joy, and peace.
Hmm.
And so moms will pick one of those that they want to focus on. They want to feel more peace in their home, even though
Mhm.
everything is chaotic all around them and they feel like they live in a circus. That's
Yeah.
okay. We can still create inner peace.
Yeah.
Or they want to feel hope that this is not always the way things are going to be.
Yeah.
Things are changing and we're growing and we're learning. There is hope for the future.
Mm.
Or joy. I want to feel so much joy in
Right.
motherhood right now. I'm not. I'm feeling frustrated and stuck, but I want to create that joy. And so those are the three main thoughts that people will want to focus on that I typically see.
Yeah, I love those. I will offer something that is vulnerable. It's hard. It is informational and interesting. I will often have women who are struggling with this go to their children and say, "What kind of mom am I to you?
Mm,
And can you give me some feedback as to how I can be a better partner in our relationship?" Those words are so important. How can I be a better partner in our relationship? And, if your kids are younger, you're using different language. But if they're in their middle school to beyond, those words are very impactful and they understand. You're going to get so much feedback in those conversations. It's a deep conversation. You're going to learn that a lot of the things that you hold on to actually have zero value to your children.
mm,
Therefore, being able to just sort of breathe away, doing the work, right? Doing the work of being able to say, that doesn't even matter to them. They didn't even notice. I'm holding on to stuff that actually doesn't matter. But also getting the feedback of, I wish that you were more intentional in listening to me. I
mhm,
wish you didn't have to fix everything every time. That's something I've heard multiple times. Um,
What?
what? A therapist trying to fix stuff? What are you talking about? Right? I wish that you, whatever it is, but being vulnerable enough to ask the question and being willing to receive
Mm,
without fighting back.
yes. That's beautiful. But I would caution from not doing that from a place of looking for validation or looking
100%.
for your worth for a mom. I know that's what you were saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But I don't want anyone to go and say, I'm going to you. I feel bad. And so let me
Make
go
me
ask
feel
my
better.
kids how I can be
Yeah.
better in
Yeah.
hopes that they're going to say, nothing. You're a great mom.
Yeah.
Kids don't work that way.
No. They're going to tell you everything,
They've
right?
got some feedback, I promise. So when we can get
Well,
to this other side of mom guilt, when we can start to
mhm.
process that and feel like we're in a healthy space,
Yeah.
when we feel validated in who we are as a person,
Mhm.
then we can go to our kids and receive that feedback in such a better place. But
Right.
that is beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. Now, I should have reset saying we've done a lot of work leading up to that conversation, right? Don't go in hot right now and say, "Hey, I
Ooh,
know that our relationship is in shambles right now. What can I do better?" Oh, I've got lots of things for you, right? Like,
let me
no,
go
we've
pull out
done.
my 10-page list. Hold
Yeah.
on. I made
Let me
some
get
notes.
yeah, let me get my journal. I'll be back. Right? No, I'm saying you've done a lot of work. We're moved through these systems, being able to get to a place where we're not seeking validation, but we're seeking information,
Mhm,
understanding. It's really a healthy experience at that point. And look, when you're moving through this stuff and you're letting go of things that are not serving you, it's felt by everybody. Just
mhm.
like you said, I wasn't always this way, but when I've made these shifts, then everything in the dynamic changes too.
Yes. Yes, it's so good.
Yeah. So, what did we miss? What did we leave out that's so imperative?
I think it's so imperative for moms to hear if they haven't heard today that they are not alone in how they
Mm,
are feeling.
right.
I think we tend to isolate as moms in an already isolated world when we're
Mm,
feeling locked up in guilt and shame. And everyone experiences this. And I know that it's so hard to believe that when you have turned inward and you are stuck here. But there is so much grace and hope and love from all of us on the other side. You're not alone. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're doing a beautiful job. You're doing the best you can with what you have to be mom to those kiddos that you have. And it's
hmm
beautiful and there's room for growth
Yeah.
and you're not alone.
Yeah. And if you've been on the other side of this, be proponents for other moms. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is I'm the crazy person as I'm walking through Target and some kid is losing their mind and you can see the mom just about to absolutely melt down, and you're trying to navigate around her and she's apologizing and all that stuff. And she's like, get up, get up, get up. I always go, hey, I'm a mom of three. I get it. I got you, sister. And there's something about that being seen and recognized that I have been in that same place and you're okay that gives them that deep breath. And if they're holding on to their breath and they're still about to lose it, I'll say, can I help you with something? Can I help you? Like, how can I help you
yes.
right now? Do you need something? What can I do? Right?
Mhm.
That's something that can actually change everything. And, you know, most of the time they're not going to say, yeah, here, help me with this, but they are going to say, thank you. I've had
Mm.
so many women as I've left an aisle and I'm on the next aisle yell, thank you. You know, I'm like, you're
Yes.
welcome. Right. And that can be such a game changer just to remember you're not alone. Your kids are going to melt down. Your feelings are going to be hurt. You're going to lose it. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It means that the moment overwhelmed you and you showed up to it.
Yes.
Okay. It's okay.
Yes. So good.
Yeah. How can someone understand more about their mom guilt and get connected with you so that they can take this journey? Because I will tell you, it is such a prevalent piece of femininity for a lot of women, for motherhood for a lot of women, is to hold things that they did wrong when it comes connected to their children. How can we find you?
Yes, I am at momlifebydesign.com. I'm Mom Life by Design on Instagram too. But I've made a special page just for you guys listening today at Mom Life by Design / Get Your Life Together Girl. If you go there, I've got resources for you. And the first thing I want to offer to you is a free download of some journal prompts. I've called them Find Yourself Again. And it's going to start that journey of finding that purpose that you may feel like you're missing today. I
Mm,
know what it's like to be in motherhood and feel like you have completely lost all sense of who you are. But you have such gifts to offer, and the world is so much better when you can show up fully as yourself.
yeah.
And so, if you want to start that process today with some journal prompts, I've got you set up there.
Mm,
And then for those of you who are ready to go deeper, I've got a course called By Design that talks about this exact thing that we're talking about today, to intentionally create the life you design in motherhood, whatever that looks like for you. And we start with figuring out what that is, because I know it can feel so scary and you can feel so lost and like you don't know what to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. We'll put all of that information in the show notes. So all you have to do is click it. If you are on Apple, there is no clickable notes. We get that all the time. So go to getyourlifetogethergirl.com. You can see the episodes and all of that information is clickable and we'll have links there. So do that as well. So we end the podcast the same way every single time. And it's to ask you, Melissa, if you'd be so willing to share what are your three things that you are most grateful for right now or just accumulatively that really has changed things for you?
Right now, I am really, really grateful for my backyard chickens that are
Oh,
laying eggs. They took a long hiatus over the winter, and I wasn't sure that we were going to get eggs again. But they provide such peace for me to listen to them in the backyard, walk through. They are so amazing to me. They just fill my heart up with joy. And so that has been really impactful to me to have those moments where I can go in nature, immerse myself in the outside world, and have a moment to pause and reflect. So they are number one on my list right
I
now.
love it. I love it.
Number two is doing school outside. I homeschool, and I am so grateful for the ability to take a blanket outside in the sunshine and do school outside right now. It's been a game changer for us
Yeah.
as we were kind of starting to butt heads a little, just changing things up and being able to get some vitamin D while we're doing school has been beautiful. So super grateful for that.
Hmm.
And then I'm really, really grateful for my support system here at home. My husband has been a champion for all things that I am and for me becoming my highest, truest self. And I'm so grateful for that because I know
Yeah.
not everybody has that.
Right.
And so to be able to lean on him and also laugh with him and just be with him has been a beautiful experience for me. And I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yeah. Beautiful gratitudes. I love all of those. What you just spoke was support, self-care, and finding a place of peace. It's
Mm.
our wish and our hope for every person that, you know, comes in our path and for every person who doesn't. And so thank you, Melissa. Thank you for your time, for your energy, for letting us all know that just because we feel something doesn't mean that it's necessarily true and that we can always change it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been such a joy to be here with you today.
When you apply the tools and thought processes Melissa and I just handed over, you have the power to shift your relationships and become the mom you've always wanted to be, minus the guilt, shame, blame that we all experience. I hope this conversation really opened your eyes to the fact that you're not alone and there is a way out of your feelings. If you would like to learn more about Melissa, you can visit her website at momlifebydesign.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at momlifebydesign. I also encourage you to go to my website to click on the special link that Melissa mentioned to download some free resources. I want to thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips and tools for bettering your life, please subscribe and turn on notifications to be alerted each week when a new episode is released. You can also follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, and now Threads. Visit those show notes and all of the great information on my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. I want to again thank you so much for being a valuable member of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.